Mr. Hanna, we are recording and we're live on YouTube.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm Joe Hanna, Chairman of the Board. The Zoning Board of Appeals will meet January 27, 2022, 7 p.m. via Zoom meeting. And we'll start with the roll call. Is Mr. Moore?
Present.
Mr. Rivas?
Present.
Mr. DeLucia?
Present.
Mr. Roos?
Present.
Okay, I'm Joe Hanna. So we have a 5-member board. I'd like to discuss how the meeting go. You need the applicant will present his case. Will ask if anyone in favor or anyone in opposition. And the applicant to in his case need 4 out of 5 vote. Okay, and we move to accept the minute from January 13, 2022.
I make a motion to accept the minutes from January 13th, 2022.
Any second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. The next regular meeting is scheduled for February 10, 2022. And now we go into the public hearing. We have 22-01 34 Mill Plain Road, 34 Mill Plain Road LLC, CA-80 zone. Requirement for each use lot deemed non-conforming shall be limited to 1 allowed use subject to Section 9B. The winter green is retabled for February, so we only have one application tonight. Anyone make a motion to open 2201?
I make a motion under new business to hear the application 22-01.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Excuse me, gentlemen, excuse me. I didn't hear who seconded that.
No, I did. Rod.
Thank you, Rod. And Mr. Hanna, did you want to seat our 2 alternates?
Yes, oh, I'm sorry about that. I forgot.
That's okay.
We'll seat Peter DeLucia for Mr. Rivero and Mr. Rose for Mr. Civic.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, now one represent the applicant?
Yes, good evening. For the record, Mike Mizuko, professional engineer. My office is in Danbury, representing 34 Mill Plain Road, LLC, and Steve Philippakis, who is also on the meeting tonight. And this is if I may, Mary, share my screen.
Oh, yes.
It might be helpful to just kind
Yes.
of walk through the whole proposal. And I first want to apologize for just the somewhat of a confusion with regard to the A2 survey, because the applications require A2 survey, and the survey hasn't been quite updated because there's been some recent work out there, and I'll walk through that as I go through my plans, which I did email to Mary and Sean this morning. So can everybody see? That's my AutoCAD screen.
Yeah, I see it now.
Okay, perfect. So this is basically the copy of the survey map that was submitted, and it's an existing 2-story building, and it's on a corner It's on the corner of Kenosha Avenue and Mill Plain Road. It's an odd-shaped lot. They had received a variance for the side yard back when the building was built. I can't remember what year that was, but, years ago. And they had a site plan that was approved, and over the years, they had sort of expanded the parking over the property line. And it seemed like it was their property because it's such a large right-of-way along Kenosha Avenue in this area. And so the applicant met with the city and went through a lease agreement for this shaded area here, which I just highlighted. So which included the parking spaces that were in that space, in that area. So once that lease agreement was acquired, we then went in and we prepared a site plan, which is essentially this plan, which showed, the formalized the parking here. We added islands, put a new curb cut in. We added a sidewalk along here, and we added some parkings just sort of to maximize the potential use of the property, with the idea that it would afford a possible change in use or medical use in the building. And we knew that medical use would require a special exception. At the time, we weren't aware, and we weren't made aware that proposing medical use, and maybe it was just a misunderstanding on our part, but making the entire building medical is a possibility. But the problem is we don't have enough parking for the entire building to be medical. And also the building is 2 stories and it doesn't have an elevator. So the second floor is not really conducive to medical use. But we do have, with this current layout, and as I said, 95% of the parking lot is done. I don't know if the line striping is done or all the curbing is complete, but the last time I was there, the paving and everything and the drainage I did inspect, that's all done and complete. The only thing that's different on this submission for the special exception was what they had agreed on with the city and the applicant, or the owner, was to finish out this section of the sidewalk if they came back in for the medical use. Again, unbeknownst to I think everybody at that point, was that because it's a non-conforming lot, it's only 0.42 acres in the CA80 zone, that they wouldn't be permitted to do that, to have mixed use. And so, that's where we are today, in just having permission to allow the medical on the first floor and the business offices to continue on the second floor. And we do have enough parking for that, as shown in the required parking. You can see we have it split in this case into medical and business. Second floor would be business, first floor medical. And we do have the required spaces. So, that's sort of it in a nutshell.
So
And
you
it
want us to allow the mixed use in that building?
Right. The medical use is the special exception use, and we don't have that approval yet because we hit this little bit of a snag in allowing the building to have 2 different uses because of that regulation that we're applying for the variance for doesn't allow for more than 1 use. And part, the other argument is that I found in the past, in my experience, is the more medical use you have, the more potential for having parking requirement problems.
Right.
Correct.
As I mentioned to Sean earlier when we spoke, I could think always back to 57 North Street, where much of that building initially was medical use, and parking was a nightmare. So we're sort of, I'm not saying we're minimizing it, but we're lessening the impact of that if the entire building's not all medical.
So what's
And we
used
don't want to
now?
have it.
Is the building
I'm sorry?
the building used now for offices only, correct?
That's correct. I think some of the space is vacant right now, but
I had a question for Sean. Sean, are we supposed to vote on zoning use, zoning board of appeal, or is that should go for a zoning board, the other one?
No, you're pretty much in here to allow the additional use on a non-conforming lot that doesn't meet the lot area. So it's just the use
Okay.
that we're addressing tonight.
Oh, okay. All right.
I have questions, or do you want to wait for the presentation to be over? Or?
I think I'm pretty much it. I mean, if you got questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Have you done a parking lot survey? And if so, how many parking spaces do you currently have with the allotted use that you're intending to do?
Well, right now, all of this parking that I'm showing on the parking table is in. So
Okay.
we had gone in and got site plan approval to expand the parking, to change the curb cut, add the islands. We had a landscaping plan. We were landscaping the front of this. This sidewalk was installed. So all of that was done under that initial site plan application. And then the applicant decided to come back in for the medical use, and that's where we are right now.
How many parking spaces do you have? I mean, and differentiate between the the leased. I've seen situations where property owners have leased property for 99 years, 50 years, what have you, to be able to meet that requirement. As you well know, in medical use, requires lots of parking. And, I'm just trying to determine how many parking spaces you have for the medical use.
So if you look at the screen, you'll see the existing parking was 10 spaces, and I separated it out entirely on the subject parcel.
Okay.
And then we had 11 spaces, either partially or entirely located within the lease area. All right. So that was prior to any work being done. And the proposed parking, but this is existing now. As I said, I think I had a note here to say that, the plans, there's work being done. It's not finalized. And I just noted to that effect. But what we were proposing that's existing right now is 18 spaces entirely on the parcel, and then same 11 spaces, either partially or entirely on the leased area. So we didn't increase anything in the leased area, and we have 29 spaces.
Okay.
And the required parking is 23.
Yeah. And how many offices upstairs?
The number of offices?
Correct.
Steve would be able to chime in and provide it, more accurate, but I want to say it's like 4 or 5.
Okay.
But based on the square footage, we would need 7 spaces for the offices upstairs and 16 spaces for the medical, which again would be 23 spaces, including 1 handicap. And because we have over 25 spaces, we need 2 handicap. So we're providing a total of 29 spaces, and we have 9 compacts.
Sean, I have a question. If they were to go entirely medical, what is the without going through this book with the regulations? Do you, off the top of your head, would you happen to know what they would need for parking?
Yeah, two times 16.
16.
Yeah, times 16.
Okay.
Yeah, correct.
Do you have any idea as to how many individual practices would want to use the medical space downstairs? Or can you anticipate that?
I can't really anticipate. Based on what I'm hearing is large medical spaces are not that desirable, especially if there's like standalone. This is might be ideal for like a physical therapist, something of that nature, or a chiropractor.
So it
Well,
would be one practice, correct? Whatever went in the downstairs would be limited to one practice.
Very likely, because it's only 2,400 square feet. It's not huge.
What's the leasing
But that-
agreement that's in place right now? How many years, or just give me the breakdown of that?
That I don't know that, but if Steve is listening, I think he was the one that was involved with that on behalf of the LLC. And maybe he can chime in and provide that information. But I know it was a long enough lease that the city was okay with us providing that in terms of a site plan approval application. And it was all reviewed by the. I'm sorry?
I just have a question. I would like to, if you can divulge more on what the hardship is exactly. I understand it's a non-conforming lot, but it's already in single use, so that's accepted. What I understand you're coming for the special use, but what?
I think the eminent domain, probably because they took portion of the lot. The state
Is
to
that?
widen the road
Yeah,
before.
they may have, and we were able to get some of it back in the long-term lease, because once it goes to the city, they're not going to give it up. But they realized that it was way too much. All of this was worked out with the traffic engineer and the city attorney. So, and again, the size of the lot and the shape of the lot is not allowing additional parking.
I understand that, but wanting a multi-use out of the building, to me, I feel is more of a self-imposed hardship than it is an actual hardship. So that's why I want a better explanation on what constitutes this as a hardship, or what is exactly the hardship. I can understand the eminent domain off the street, but the building is perfectly fine right now. It's in compliance. Asking for the multi-use, you're therefore, I feel you're self-imposing yourself a hardship.
Well, it's in terms of, I guess the explanation would be, if the building is there and the multiple use doesn't provide any adverse effect on the property, just because the lot size is under the minimum requirement, the use, if it's permitted as a special exception use and permitted by the zoning regulations, why wouldn't it be allowed to be used? I guess would be the better answer.
The problem I'm having, Mizuko, is that I just need a little more precise clarification on exactly how many parking spaces you have, exactly, what's going in there. I asked how many offices, you tell me 4 or 5. I can't vote on, 4 or 5. I need, I'm a commercial real estate landlord, and trying to, maximize and optimize the use of your building is your client's building is a good thing, I think, for the town. But we need to have precise information, because in commercial, as you well know, everything is predicated on parking, and I have to have that information in front of me to be able to vote on it, to approve of that nature.
Right, I understand that, but the parking is not predicated on the number of offices. It's based on the square footage. So it doesn't matter if there's 2 offices or 4 offices, medical offices, and it doesn't matter. The same thing would apply for the business use. if you had two offices and it's the same square footage, the parking is not going to change because it's all based on gross square footage. That makes sense? I mean, I kind of understand where you're going with that, but it's all based on square footage.
Mr. Mazzucco, I want you to highlight that is the state bought some portion of that land where you have the sidewalk, where you lost the spaces before?
A little bit. They did take some of this corner for the, I think, traffic signaling and some widening in this area here. So yes, they did take a small piece of that.
Do you know how many spaces you lost for that?
You know, again, because of the odd shape down in here, that you couldn't put any parking here anyway because it's in the front yard.
But you don't have a parking there before, right?
No, there was no parking down here.
Okay.
How are you going to delineate between the parking places for the usage, the 7 spaces required for the businesses upstairs versus the 16 that are required for downstairs medical use? How are you going to delineate between the usage? Because I can see, you know, pulling into the parking lot and grabbing the first spot that you see.
Yeah, there's never been any that I know of for limitations or designation for spaces for medical. I mean, I know that there's, in terms of the regulations and requirement for that, I've never seen that. Although, you know, you go to certain businesses and they'll have signs out front, parking for X business only.
Right. Well, so hopefully you can understand my position is, let's say that there's 4 or 5 different businesses upstairs, and each business has 3 employees working from 9 to 5. That's 15 of the spaces that are going to be taken up by those employees. You'll never be able to meet the quota required for the medical usage.
Well, I mean, we can certainly designate parking spaces based on the square footage of the occupied space, but at the end of the day, it's all based on the square footage.
Okay. Would you consider putting in some type of card reader that would separate the business usage from where they could park, and it would be separate from the remaining spaces? Is that something that you would consider?
I don't even know how you could make that work, how it could be functional, because it's not like you only have one entrance. It's not like you can put another, you know, separate the parking lot.
I don't care how people get into the building. I want to make sure that there's enough parking for the people that are supposed to have the parking.
But I mean, if somebody comes in as a visitor,
that could be an issue. The way that this egress and ingress is for this facility, it's on a busy road, especially during rush hour. That could be hectic there with a card reader. My opinion.
Well, you could bury that someplace deeper into the property. The 7 spaces that you're going to allocate the 7 spaces that you're going to allocate for the business doesn't need to be right along the street.
I understand. I see now what you're saying. Okay.
It could be based on the screen that we're looking at. If the employees, when they come in, they enter the parking lot and turn right, you could have a card reader right there with those spots that are already delineated, separated from the remaining spaces.
But what is the card reader going to do?
It's going to so those people who are in the business upstairs would possess a card reader, where you would have an arm go up or down that would allow the people upstairs to enter into that parking area, leaving the remaining
parking area. You're talking about a reader here?
No, I'm talking about you enter there.
Yeah.
Where your cursor is, okay, continue straight. Now turn right.
Yep.
All the way to the right, all the way to the right. Keep going, keep going, keep going. Those spaces right in there.
These compact spaces.
Yep, maybe you don't make them compact spaces.
Yeah, I mean, they're already built. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they were built.
I think
before.
Yeah.
So they
yeah,
were
they were
built before this variance.
No, they were built for the previous site plan application. So
Okay.
this is done. A lot of this is already improved. As I said, the drainage was already in. They made the connection into the state drainage system. We put this
Right.
catch basin here because we knew that there was a potential for this sidewalk to go in, and we didn't want water going across the sidewalk to get to this
Right.
catch basin. So, all that's been done, but that was all just to make the site improved under the previous application. And then there was an interest for medical use, and we had talked about it early on when we were going through this whole lease of this space and the development of the site plan to show the expanded parking area.
Okay.
So all of this is done. We're not trying to get a variance so we can do this. All of this is done. All we would like to do is to have the ability to have medical on the first floor, which we have enough parking for. We even have a few extra spaces. There's not an elevator in the building, so medical is not conducive for the second floor. We don't want to try to put medical and then put the medical business offices upstairs, because that's not the ideal situation. I don't think if there was signs designating parking for particular units, I don't think I think that's probably the better solution to a concern that you might have. But I don't see where a card reader is going to work, honestly.
Okay. So you're willing to take and somehow designate an area for those businesses.
Right. And I think in this situation, you would want these spaces up here not taken by employees, because you would want them for the visitors.
Exactly. I don't want my 85-year-old mother who has chiropractic issues parking in the far right corner where you have compacts there, who's going to be in and out of that office for an hour, versus somebody who's going to park their car right up against the building and not leave there until 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
I totally agree. I mean, and that's why there's 2 handicap spots right here. The entrance to the building is right here.
Okay. Just
Can
as long as we
can we get
understand.
Sorry, go ahead, Mr. Roos.
No problem. No, go ahead, please.
And then back to Commissioner DeLuce's question is, I would like to also get a confirmed account of how many offices are on the upstairs.
Only three, Mike. Three, only three offices upstairs.
Okay, thanks, Steve.
Hi.
All right.
Only 3 offices. An attorney and 3 cars. I would say that's all they occupy, 3 cars, three offices.
And actually, that's a moving target. It's 3 today, could be 5 next week with fit up. It could be a year from now, 1 office, a new tenant fit up for 1 office. So what stays the same is the square footage. What's comprised of offices can change anytime, depending on when leases are changed. So that's not a big concern for me, as long as we're looking at what this gross square footage is, and there's more than enough parking based on that.
And because the square footage is the same, it's not going to change the amount of parking spaces that are required.
Right.
I agree. I think the total square footage, that's what we should go by, because things change all the time with offices now.
And if I may, the square footage downstairs, it's only 2,050 square feet. You're looking for 1,700 square feet as a medical building. That's the occupy, the square footage for the first floor as a chiropractor would be there. It's not a,
Yeah, and that's because of stairwells and some other things. But according to the regulations, we go by the gross
okay.
square foot. So,
I'm still having an issue.
but I thought I'm sorry, before I
Go
think
ahead.
I mentioned we had a few extra spaces, but we actually have 6 extra spaces.
I'm still having an
23
issue. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, there's 23 spaces required and we have 29 total.
I still have an issue because it's the lot is deemed non-conforming to because of section 9B. And reading section 9, the whole intent was that it's understood that there was buildings, lots, businesses constructed pre and post. Some of them were there post. I would assume that construction or inception of this zoning regulations. And the whole intention is that if a lot is deemed non-conforming, that it be delegated to single use. And the issue I'm having and continue to have is that the whole process of this of that zoning regulation is to make it better, to fix that hardship as we move on and progress. I feel like we're making this more non-conforming by attempting to put a multi-use here. I don't see the hardship. I just don't see it. And to me, I feel that we're taking something that's in compliance, that's already non-conforming lot, and making it more non-conforming. I don't feel confident in that.
Well, from every perspective of the lot itself, there's going to be no change in terms of the physical site. So it's not like in a typical variance where you'd be asking for, say, a front relief on the front yard or the side yard, which they already got because, you know, the lot it's an odd shaped lot. But my point is the granting of the variance for a different use makes no difference on the property, and it's still going to exist exactly the way it is today.
I understand
There's
that.
no change.
I understand that,
So
but
I don't
why make
understand.
something? Why make something? I understand that physically you can't change the way of the shape of the lot or the building, but I would find it easier to grant a variance. Let's say if this building was to be used as a medical only, and the variance needed would be for the parking, I think it would be easier to come to this board and say, hey, I need a variance for the parking because I don't have sufficient parking because of the medical use. Instead of coming here and saying, hey, I want multi-use, I feel that that's a more egregious
I disagree with you. I disagree with you because you're giving relief on, say, if the entire building was medical and we came in for a variance for the required parking, you still have a potential for parking issues. We're not presenting that.
I believe that you'll still have issues with parking. Commissioners on the board here have stated that businesses change, leases change. So what's to say that? I understand we're going off of square footage, but what is it to say that employees, a business comes in with 5 or 6 employees instead of 3 cars? You have now double the amount. It can change with parking as well.
Well, I understand that can change, but at least we're meeting the regulation for the required parking for what we're asking for. We're not saying we'd like to use the whole building for medical, and we're asking for a variance for the required number of parking spaces that the regulations require. I mean, that would be making it worse, in my opinion. We're not making it worse. We already show that we have a sufficient number of parking for the different uses. It has no effect on the appearance of the site at all. We're not asking for this variance to expand parking, change the site. It's already existing. It has no effect at all. Zero. And we have 6 extra spaces to boot. And my point before is I'd rather have half the building medical than the whole thing, because the more medical you have, the more chances you're going to get a medical practitioner in there, like a dermatologist, and they have people in the waiting room. I've been in there. There's 6 people in the waiting room just waiting. I've walked out of appointment for a doctor, for a dermatologist, because I waited like an hour. So
I
the
understand
more
that.
you
Well, I
increase the
understand that.
medical, but
I
the more you
understand that.
increase the medical use, the more problems that you have, that you can expect.
I understand
regard
that
to
you
parking.
feel like you can have it with it's better to have it with medical, or you can just not do it at all and keep it office space, and then you go back to just being in compliance and not having to come up again to this board.
Yeah, but I guess if there's an opportunity that has no effect on anything, I don't see a big problem.
You have
Honestly.
to see it from where I'm coming from as a commission member. I'm trying to follow the regulations that are set before the city, and I feel, in my opinion, that this is just a self-imposed hardship, and instead of I'm trying to least less severe variance to applicants, and I feel like this would not be doing that.
Mr. Mazuko, I have a question. Next to the handicap parking over there, where you have all these lines that the land drop, can
Oh,
you,
the contour lines.
yeah, can you make any additional parking there, or that's it?
No, from this area here, these contour lines, this drops right down to the railroad tracks. I mean, you're talking, a 20-foot drop from here to here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Mizuko, when you were making these improvements, what was the original intent? I mean, to keep it the same. You said that at some point you decided to go for the medical or what have you. I'm just trying to understand this, because I feel like this is all being put into our lap.
No, not at all. It was just the
improvements. What was the intent, and then what changed, and when?
Well, the parking spaces were already out here, and the owner wanted to go in and just make the most use out of the site that he could. So he went in and got the lease, and put the islands in and improved the whole situation, because it was.
He did this. Now, did he act on his own, or was this in compliance, or in with the zoning, working closely with the zoning department?
No. All in. Yeah, we went in and we applied for site plan approval for basically this plan. And before we could do that, we had to go in, and he signed a long-term lease for that shaded area for the spaces that were not on the property. So we addressed that issue and then got site plan approval for this layout. And this work, 95% of it is done. So he was just looking to maximize the parking spaces that he could put on the properties. And he straightened them it was kind of a mess out there. So we fixed up some of the things, the dumpster, we put a separate dumpster location. It was kind of slaying over here in this area haphazardly. So we just cleaned up the site. He has a full landscaping plan that's going to be implemented to landscape along here and along the site on Mill Plain Road. All that like a normal site plan application. And then he had somebody that was interested in a possible taking the first floor for medical use. And that's when we applied for the special exception, unbeknownst that we weren't allowed to have 2 uses because the lot's conforming, which to me, personally doesn't make a lot of sense.
So all this work wasn't done with the application that we would just grant the variance?
No, not at all. Not at all.
Like I'm kind of, being held to something that, I have no awareness of.
Right. Yeah. I'm trying to like walk you through all of the steps to tell you, you know, where we were, how it all started, where we've been, and kind of where we are right now.
Okay.
We appreciate that. Thank you.
Anytime.
Any more questions from the board?
Well, what Juan is saying is, are we taking a step back and potentially granting a variance where it just makes a lot that's already non-complying legal, but non-complying in so many ways? Or is it simply so close to the same use that it in a sense doesn't really create a new variance, in that it doesn't change much of anything? The only thing it could change is the number of trips in and out of that driveway, because medical space versus office space will certainly create more trips in and out. That may be the only negative effect of changing to medical, and I don't know how significant that is.
It's right here on the screen.
Okay,
But also
I mean,
now,
I'm going by the
there it is.
I'm going by the city's trip generation. So for the second floor business, it's 29 and 180 for the medical, 209 total based on the, again, this is the city regulate, and it's in the city regs. So we go by based off of that. It's based on so many trips per day per 1,000 square feet of gross floor area. So that's what you're looking at there.
I tend to agree with
So
Mr. Moore, and I tend to agree with Mr. Moore insofar as that all the elements that are required are already in place. The parking,
Right.
the parking with the proposed use is, excuse me, is already there. It's not like we have to change the layout of the well, you can't change the layout because it is what it is already. But how?
Right.
But its usage in terms of meeting the necessary parking places. All of that is already in place, and that's where I agree with Rod. Is this a question of the site, or is this just a question of, well, the building's already there, and do we want them to have a medical and office space? I understand Mr. Rivas's concerns as well, having gone through multiple hearings where you do end up denying a request because the hardship becomes self-imposed, but at the same time, the majority of those types of denials are because of, because you need to alter the rear side or front setbacks. The building is what it is. It's not going to change. The building's not getting picked up. It's not getting moved. So it just boils down to a question of and Mr. Rivas pointed this out too, as far as its usage. But all the components that are necessary, if this was to be approved, are already in place. There does not need to be any alterations. Although I'll be honest with you, if we do approve it, I am going to stipulate that there is some type of delineation between business usage and medical usage.
And that would be fine. And I just would like to say that really the only thing that would be different is the trips per day, because it's different for medical use, obviously, as you just saw on the table.
yeah,
I'm sorry, one other thing. If indeed that further down the road that the owner of this property feels that it would be to his benefit to rent out the spaces, both floors being medical, they would have to come back here for that approval as well. So this isn't just a one and done, and they have free reign and free choice to do whatever it is they want. If they do alter it again, its usage, they need to come back before the board again.
Yeah, the parking spaces will be out of sync.
Exactly. So there is some sort of check and balance with this particular application.
Right, because if it was used for all medical, which is not really conducive but you wouldn't be able to fully lease the second floor of Law Medical. You'd have to have some space that was just storage.
Well, who says in 5 years from now you can't decide to install an elevator, and then boom, you're all set? You know.
Well, again, you
So-
would, to some degree you would, but you're still, you're putting an elevator up to some space that you'd have to have, basically empty because you don't have the parking to support the 2 floors for medical.
But
Okay.
you have Mr. Mizuko, you have trouble with putting stipulation that only the first floor be used for medical?
No, not at all. Not at
Okay.
all.
So
That's fine.
that's what Mr. Roos, I think, is saying, right?
Oh no, what I'm saying is that I want somehow to let there be the 7 required parking spaces that are going to be the office space to somehow be delineated, which means you can only park here for the offices.
For
I
medical
want
office.
right, or I want a sign or something like that, that this section is reserved for the office space and that everything else is for the medical use. That's what I'm looking for.
Okay. You want that can work for you, Mr. Mizuko?
Yes, I have no problem with that.
And
Okay.
actually, Mr. Hanna, I don't think a stipulation would be necessary because if he went to the second floor with medical, he's back looking for a variance for parking spaces unless he builds a parking garage or something. So,
I know, but I mean, the offices is the offices, whether medical or the other one. The only difference is the parking space. But today, not too much demand for regular offices anymore, but there's a lot of demand for small doctor offices in Danbury. So we all see that, they have, the Danbury is over flooded with regular offices but medical offices you need.
And Mr. Moore, he also has 6 additional places that he can play with also.
yeah, he's got a little room there. Yeah,
But I want those to be for medical patients,
sure. Yeah.
All right.
or medical staff or whatever.
I'm not as concerned as Mr. Rivas is, although I understand that we're creating a variance that's particularly obnoxious or in any way changing, and it doesn't affect the health, welfare, and safety or anything like that. I'm still looking at the hardship, kind of struggling with that a little bit, because you do have full use of the building currently as all office space. And I was wanted to ask you a question too about in the hardship. You say to be fully used. Wait a minute, get down here. Let's see. Does not permit the building to be fully used for medical, and the corner lot. Let's see. Well, when I read that again, there's something else in the hardship that I was reading between the lines before, but I withdraw that question. It states it clearly there, but I do still look at the hardship. I always do. I joke I like hardships. Well, I don't, but I mean, I like to see them well defined. And I'm not quite there yet with what's there. Maybe you could expand on that a little further, because currently there is full use of the building. You're not restricted by any zoning regulations to use it to obtain the maximum rent roll possible.
I'm sorry, repeat that question again.
Yeah, well, long questions to make short is I'm still a little not clear on why it's a hardship, because you do have full use of the building already for office space.
Right, and that's correct. However, it's hard to lease spaces now, and he could go in for full medical, and that would be a single use. He wouldn't need a variance. But it's an older building. There is no elevator. Again, we talked about the fact that he couldn't use the entire second floor. There would be a portion of it that couldn't be used because it would require too much parking space, too many parking spaces. And it, again, the second floor is not conducive to medical use, but it just would be nice to have the ability to have the medical and multiple use there. And I think my point is that usually when you're granting a variance, you're making something less conforming in the physical sense, right? Like
Mhm.
you're getting a side yard variance, you're getting closer to the neighbor, and you're oftentimes asked to what is the hardship, and a lot of times it may be topography or the shape of the lot. I mean, if the shape of this lot was different, maybe we could fit the rest of the spaces on there to get the whole thing medical. But I think at the end of the day, it comes down to the medical on the second floor is not really conducive.
Well, I'm just to focus back on the hardship for one more minute. What you are saying, and I think Mr. Hanna said it as well, it's medical space is easier to lease currently than office space. So I'll ask a loaded question. Is this an economic hardship?
Well, I mean, let's face it, a lot of times these things, you know, they boil down to, can you get somebody in there to lease a space? I mean, if you have to sometimes change a use, unfortunately the medical, or it's not the medical use is allowed as a special exception. So it's not like we do have to go through the planning commission to get that approved. So we're not out of the water yet with getting the approvals, but you know, the threshold for that type of special exception is as long as it's not posing any, you know, threat to health, safety, and welfare, then it generally, you know, is okay. And we're not changing anything. There is no threat to health, safety, and welfare. So it would generally be approved at the planning commission on a special exception level.
Right.
So it's just that the lot size is smaller than the current zone, and he's being penalized because it's an existing non-conforming size lot. But I guess I have to, you know, wonder why I guess the thought, why is the thought process, or why was the regulation in place anyway? Because from a pure logical sense, if you have the parking spaces required for the uses, as long as the uses are permitted in the zone, then what's the difference? Like, what's the difference if this was an 80,000 square foot lot, and you know the lot was steep and continued on down to the railroad tracks, and all of that land was over there? What difference does it make? It makes no difference.
Well, you point out something that I had thought of a little earlier when Juan was talking about this too, and in the fact that essentially medical use is a permitted use with special exception. The problem here, of course, is the lot size, which brings a hardship back to the shape and size of the lot, essentially, I guess.
Yeah, and that's a big thing, because if it was maybe shaped differently or in a square shape, we might get enough parking where we would say, let's make it all medical. But again, we still have the problem with, it's an older building, there is no elevator, and that's a big factor.
Okay, I don't think I have any more questions.
Anyone else have more questions?
I just want to say, I'm sorry if I came at anybody any type of way. I just want people to understand that as a commission member, I'm appointed to this position to make sure that we follow the regulations and we hold a standard. And if I don't ask questions, or I, you know, debate something to this level, you know, I need to make sure that I'm holding myself to a standard of not letting just something, applicants come to us to get applications approved all the time, and we try to help as best as we can, but we can't just let by the wayside the regulations because it's certain things or feelings. So all I'm trying to say is that I'm just trying to do the best that I can in my capacity, and if I ask questions, I'm asking them for a reason.
Good job, Luan.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
I was going to say, Juan, this is an area of, I think the new chairman would agree with this. It's up to him to make this decision, but I think we could say this is an area where we have still free speech and opposing positions that can be expressed.
I'm all for all free speech, but
Okay.
I'm one member of the board, and everybody entitled to his opinion, and whether he vote in favor or oppose or whatever. But my understanding, it is office building, it is going down fast because the new economy today, there is no demand for this stuff. So, I mean, I'm not saying it's not addressing it from the point of economic situation, but demand for small doctor office or medical office, that is good for the community too, to allow certain things somewhere. You don't need to go to a big, huge office medical building. And, that's my opinion. I don't know how you guys take it, but anyway.
I agree with you, Commissioner. I think this is, something for the good of the community. And I just want to add, I certainly won't apologize for asking any hard questions. This is what we do.
No, you can ask any question you like. Fine.
This is what we do. And we certainly
Exactly.
are not here to apologize, Mr. Mizuko, for any hard questions.
Oh, no,
You tonight.
no, not at all. Not at all. There's no like hard question or stupid question. It's all fine. You
That's
fire
good.
away and I will answer to the best of my ability.
You can ask any question you like, and they have to answer it, and that's it. So,
That's right.
are we all done with that now?
Yep.
Okay, anybody in support of this application?
We have to
Anyone?
close the meeting.
Uh,
Do you have to close the hearing
No,
part first?
Not yet.
Oh, yeah.
Not yet.
Oh, okay.
No, we gotta see who is in support, who is in opposition. Anyone in support? Anyone in opposition? I don't hear anything. So now we can have a motion to close it. If no more question.
Mr. Hannah, may I say just one thing, and that is that one of the letters to the abutting property owners was returned to our office. I did speak with Mike Mizuko about it, and I did call the company. It turned out it was Conrail, and I spoke with a representative there. I told him we were having a meeting this evening, and he said he would try to get back to me. He did not get back to me, and I just wanted to go on the record as saying that we did have one mailing returned to us, and that was to Consolidated Railroad.
So you have a letter from them or just?
No, the letter, the notification that we sent out saying
okay.
this application was coming on tonight's agenda.
Okay.
They did not get back to me today, so,
All right, so if they don't
Leave it at
respond on
that.
time, that's their problem.
okay.
Okay, can
Motion to
we?
close.
We have a motion to close 2201.
So
I
moved.
make a motion. Oh, go ahead, Mr. Rivas.
I move to close application 22-01.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, let's, any motion to open 2201 for voting?
Make a motion on open 22-1 for voting.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Now we need a motion, the big one.
I'll make a motion to improve 22-01 to redo, to allow a second use in a non-conforming CA 80 lot. It does not affect in any way the health, welfare, and safety of the neighborhood. It does not even change the footprint or any part of the landscape or designs, etc. And with that said, even though it's a variance, it's still an allowed use technically with a public hearing. And effectively, there is almost invisible change in how that building will be used going forth. Per plan submitted, including the landscape design that's there that needs to be done per zoning. And the designation too of an area in the front of the building as a stipulation that be marked for medical office use.
Any second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So it's all approved.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. All right.
Have a good night.
Now we need we need a motion to adjourn.
Just one moment. Mr. Hanna, remember I have the letter to read from Mr.
I'm gonna
Dowdy.
read the letter, correct. Yeah, you're right.
So gentlemen, Mr. Dowdy called me, but then he dropped off a copy of his September 1st letter of resignation to Mayor Cavo. But he also asked if I would read that as well as his postscript because of a particular reason, which you'll understand when I get there. So this is addressed to Mayor Cavo on September 1st. Dear Mayor Cavo, I'm writing this letter in my capacity as the longtime chairman of the Danbury Zoning Board of Appeals to give you notice of my resignation from this position as of September 1st. I believe that continued oversight of the board under the current acting chair would be the best direction for the ongoing administration of all ZBA business moving forward, as well as allow for a more seamless and long overdue transition to the new official chairman. It has been my honor to serve the city of Danbury as a member of the board for nearly 47 years, having been first appointed by former Mayor Donald Boughton in 1974 and then subsequently reappointed by each successive mayor after. I extend my thanks to my colleagues, past and present, who have served as members of the Zoning Board of Appeals during this time or have otherwise been associated with my tenure as chairman. I am more than confident in the knowledge that I leave the running of the board in highly capable hands. Sincerely, Richard S. Jowdy. Postscript, and to all and every person, thank you all from the bottom of my heart, Dick. And that's the part he wanted to be sure everybody knew they were thanked and how much he appreciated it.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Dowdy
Yeah,
will be missed.
yeah. Yeah, that's now on the record for all perpetuity to be read and enjoyed by many to come. Right?
Yes.
All right. Unless you guys want to stay here more, I don't know.
So
Have a
you
great
need
night,
a motion.
everybody. Careful with the storm.
Wait a minute. We need the motion to adjourn.
Yep.
Right, we need a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second,
I second.
who's second?
That's-
Oh, Peter second.
Peter, okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Bye.
Aye.
We'll see you next week.
Thank
Yeah.
you very much.
Take care, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Mr. Hick.
Good night.
Take care
Good
now.
night.
Again, everybody.
Good night.